What if I told you that the best moment of your fishing trip is the 5 seconds before your first cast ever hits the water, and that after that first splash, for many of you, it's all downhill? Sounds crazy, right? We're taught that patience is everything. But today, we're going to talk about the single biggest time waster in fishing, sitting in one spot for hours after you've already spooked every single fish in the area. I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand the brutal truth about how fish react to that first disturbance. You'll see why your patience is actually costing you fish, and why the best anglers are constantly on the move. So let me ask you this, and be honest. How long do you typically stay in one spot if you're not getting any bites? 30 minutes? An hour? Let me know down in the comments. I'm curious to see. For generations, we've been told the same thing by our dads, our granddads, and every old-timer at the boat ramp. Find a good spot and stay there. Be patient. The fish will bite eventually. It's a noble idea, and it comes from a good place. It's rooted in the belief that fishing is about quiet contemplation and waiting for that magic moment. We get attached to our honey holes, those spots where we caught a big one 5 years ago. We build them up in our minds as guaranteed producers. So we go back, time and time again, and we sit. We wait. We trust the process. But here's the problem. Fish behavior has changed. Our waters are more pressured than ever. Fish are smarter, warier, and they don't follow the old rules. The sit-and-wait strategy that worked 30 years ago is often a recipe for failure on today's busy lakes and rivers. Let's start by painting a picture. It's dawn. The water is perfectly still like glass. You've got your gear ready, and you're looking at a prime piece of cover, a fallen tree, a weed edge, a rocky point. This is the moment of pure potential. In this exact second, before you do anything, the fish in that area are in their natural state. They might be cruising, they might be ambushing prey, but they are relatively calm and undisturbed. This is the zone of maximum opportunity. Everything you've done to get here, waking up early, the quiet approach to the bank, the careful movements, has led to this perfect, undisturbed moment. The fish have no idea you exist. This is the single most valuable and delicate moment of your entire fishing trip, and it's about to be shattered. This is your one best chance to present a lure to a fish that is not on high alert. Remember this feeling of calm, because we're about to see how quickly it all changes for the worse. Now you make your first cast. The lure sails through the air and lands in the water. To you, it's a satisfying little plop, but to the fish, it's a bomb going off in their living room. Imagine you're sitting in a dead quiet library and someone throws a bowling ball onto the floor. You wouldn't just sit there and wonder what it was. You'd jump out of your skin. That's what's happening underwater. The impact creates a splash, which is a visual alarm, but more importantly, it sends a pressure wave, a shock wave, through the water. Sound travels over 4 times faster in water than in air. That single plop is a loud, unnatural explosion that alerts every fish in the immediate vicinity that something is wrong. It's a signal from above, from a world they associate with predators like birds of prey. Their instinct isn't curiosity. Their first, primal instinct is pure survival and immediate danger. Let's try to see this from the fish's perspective for a moment. A bass, for example, has a lateral line running down its side. This is an incredible sensory organ that detects tiny vibrations and pressure changes in the water. It's how they hunt baitfish and sense danger. When your half-ounce jig crashes into the surface, their lateral line lights up like a Christmas tree. It's not a subtle dinner bell ringing, it's a fire alarm blaring. The shadow of the lure, the unnatural speed, and the violent entry into their world all scream predator. A fish's brain is hardwired for a simple equation. strange disturbance from above equals danger. They don't have the luxury of intellectual curiosity. The fish that survive and grow big are the ones that react first and ask questions later. And their reaction is almost always to flee or lock down, not to investigate the source of the chaos you just created. So what happens in those first few seconds after the bomb goes off? It's what I call the initial scatter. The most active and aggressive fish, the ones you are most likely to catch, are often the first to react. They don't sit around. They don't wait to see if it's food. The biggest, wisest fish in the school immediately bolt. They will shoot for the nearest cover, whether it's deeper water, the thickest part of the weeds, or under a dark ledge. They are instantly gone from the strike zone. You might see a little surface boil or a flicker of movement as they dart away, but often it's too fast to notice. The slightly less wary fish might freeze in place, becoming completely rigid and on high alert. They are no longer in a feeding mood, they are in survival mode. In a matter of seconds, you have effectively educated the entire population of fish in that spot. The party is over before it even began. This leads us to the myth of the dead zone. Many anglers believe that even if they make a bad cast, the fish are still somewhere in the area. And technically that's true, but they are not in the strike zone anymore. The area 10 to 15 feet around where your lure landed has become a no-go zone. It's been marked as a dangerous place. The fish that scattered have repositioned themselves on the edges, watching and waiting. They are now highly suspicious of anything that enters that area. So when you make your second, third, and fourth cast into the exact same spot, you are throwing your lure into an empty, abandoned space. You're fishing in the ghost town you just created. The fish are looking at your lure from a safe distance, and their instincts are telling them, stay away from there. You're not being patient, you're just repeatedly knocking on the door of an empty house. And let's be honest, it's not just about the lure. The disturbance starts long before your cast. Think about your own presence. If you're fishing from the bank, is your shadow falling across the water where you intend to cast? That dark, moving shape is a classic predator signal. Are you walking heavily, sending vibrations through the ground and into the water? If you're in a boat, did you slam a storage lid? Did you drop a pair of pliers on the deck? All of these sounds travel directly through the hull and into the water, alerting fish long before your lure even gets wet. We often focus so much on the lure and the retrieve that we forget we are a massive, noisy intruder in their world. The first cast is often just the final alarm bell after a series of warnings you've already given them that you are there. Stealth is not just for hunters in the woods, it's a critical skill for any serious angler. Now let's talk about the second cast mistake. You've made your first cast, created a commotion, and the fish have scattered or shut down. Your instinct is to cast right back to the same spot. Maybe you think a different color or a slightly different retrieve will work. But what message are you sending to the fish? You are simply confirming their suspicions. The first boom was a warning. The second boom, just seconds later, tells them the threat is persistent. It's not a random, one-time event. It is an active predator in their space. This is especially true for smarter, more pressured fish like bass or trout. You are actively teaching them to avoid your lures. Each cast you make into that dead zone reduces your chances of catching anything there to nearly zero. You're not tempting them, you're terrifying them. It's like a car alarm that keeps going off. At first it's a shock, but soon it's just a clear signal to stay far away. This brings us to what I call the patience trap. It's the most common mistake I see anglers make every single day. They make their casts, and when nothing happens, they tell themselves, I just need to be patient, I'll wait them out. They'll switch lures a dozen times, trying every color in the box, all while standing in the exact same spot. They are waiting in an empty room, hoping someone will walk in. But the fish have already left the building. Real angling patience isn't about sitting still for an hour. Real patience is having the discipline to methodically work an area and the intelligence to recognize when it's time to move on. Wasting your precious time on the water fishing a spot that you've already spooked is not a virtue. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of fish behavior. You are trapping yourself with a bad strategy and blaming the fish for not cooperating. Here's a simple analogy from the world of hunting. Imagine a hunter who walks into a clearing, fires a loud rifle into the air, and then sits down to wait for a deer to appear. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Any deer within earshot would be in the next county in a matter of seconds. They wouldn't stick around to see what the noise was about. We, as anglers, need to start thinking of fish in the same way. They are wild animals with finely tuned survival instincts. They are not domesticated pets waiting for us to feed them. Your first cast is that rifle shot. It announces your presence in the most disruptive way possible. To then sit there and expect the fish to just forget about it and casually swim back to the danger zone is wishful thinking. They are wired to associate that spot with danger, and they will avoid it until the threat is long gone. Now you might be thinking, but I've caught fish on my second or third cast in the same spot. And you're right, it can happen, but let's break down what's likely going on. In any group of fish, there are varying levels of aggression and intelligence. You might get lucky, and your lure lands directly on the head of the most aggressive, least intelligent fish in the school. That's a reaction strike. The fish didn't have time to think, it just bit. Or you might be fishing for a species that is less wary. But here's the key. While you are catching that one fish, you have thoroughly spooked and educated the other 99% of the fish in that school. You caught the easy one, but the bigger, smarter, and more challenging fish are now long gone or have their mouths firmly shut. You've traded one small victory for the potential of catching several better quality fish. The goal isn't just to catch one, it's to understand how to catch more than one. So, the critical question is, where did all the fish actually go? They haven't vanished into thin air. Fish are incredibly efficient with their energy. They don't want to swim a mile away every time they get spooked. Instead, they make short, strategic retreats to the nearest point of safety. For a base sitting on a log, this might mean moving to the deeper, darker side of the log. For a school of crappie in a brush pile, it means sinking down into the absolute thickest part of the branches where they feel secure. For trout in a stream, it's a quick dash under the nearest undercut bank. They have moved just outside of what they perceive as the immediate danger zone. They are still nearby, but they have repositioned themselves defensively. They are no longer in a prime feeding position. They are now in a prime survival position, watching and waiting for the threat to leave. This is why the common technique of fan casting from a single spot is often flawed. The idea is to stand in one place and cast in a wide arc to cover all the water in front of you. It seems efficient on the surface, but think about it in the context of what we've just discussed. Your very first cast, let's say straight ahead, has already spooked the fish in that entire area. Now you make your next cast 10 feet to the left. You're casting into an area where the fish are already on high alert from the first splash. Then you cast 10 feet to the right into another zone of spooked fish. You're not covering new, fresh water with unsuspecting fish. Instead, you are systematically casting into areas that are already contaminated by your own presence and disturbance. You are essentially just reconfirming the danger across a wider arc. You're casting at where the fish were a few minutes ago, not where they are now. Instead of blindly casting, it's time to start reading the water after your cast. Be a detective. Your first cast is also a tool for gathering information. Did you see any small bait fish scatter on the surface when your lure landed? That's a huge clue that predator fish were likely in the area and are now spooked. Did you see a nervous wake or a push of water moving away from the impact zone? That was probably a bigger fish making a run for it. If you see these signs, it's both good news and bad news. The good news is that you were in the right area. Fish were definitely there. The bad news is that they are probably not there anymore. Conversely, if your lure lands and absolutely nothing happens, no bait scatter, no wakes, complete silence, it might mean the spot was empty to begin with. Pay attention to these subtle clues. The water is constantly talking to you, especially in the moments after that initial disturbance. So, here's a new mindset I want you to try. I call it the 1-minute rule. When you approach a new spot, give yourself just a few casts, maybe 3 or 4 at the most, to determine if there are any active, willing fish there. Make your absolute best, quietest, and most accurate cast to the heart of the cover. If you don't get a bite, or see a follow, or even a hint of life within that first minute or so, it's time to move. This isn't about being impatient. It's about being incredibly efficient. You are giving the most aggressive fish in that spot their one best chance to eat your lure before they wise up. If they don't take it, the odds of convincing a now wary fish to bite drop dramatically with every subsequent cast. The highest probability of a strike is on that very first cast into undisturbed water. After that, your chances decrease exponentially. Don't waste your time fighting a losing battle. The solution to all of this is beautifully simple. Move your feet, or if you're in a boat, use your trolling motor. The single biggest difference between professional anglers and average weekend fishermen is the willingness to constantly move and cover water. After you've worked a spot for a minute or two, according to our new rule, don't just stand there. Move 10 or 20 feet down the bank. Move to the other side of the fallen tree. Reposition your boat to get a completely new casting angle. This simple act of moving allows you to present your lure to a fresh, undisturbed group of fish. You are leaving the spooked fish behind and going on the hunt for a new group that doesn't know you're there. Fishing is a game of percentages. By constantly moving, you are dramatically increasing your odds of putting your lure in front of an active, catchable fish. You stop waiting for the game to come to you and start taking the game to them. Let me paint a final picture for you. Imagine 2 anglers on the same stretch of riverbank. Angler A finds a nice-looking spot, a deep pool behind a rock. He makes a cast. Nothing. He makes another. He changes lures. He spends the next 45 minutes in that same 10-foot section of bank, growing more and more frustrated, convinced the fish are just being finicky. Now look at Angler B. He starts at the top of the pool, makes 3 casts, and then takes 10 big steps down the bank, 3 more casts, another 10 steps. He is constantly moving, methodically dissecting the entire stretch of water. By the time Angler A is packing up in frustration, Angler B has covered 200 yards of water and has landed 3 fish. He didn't have a secret lure or a magic technique. He simply understood that he needed to go find the fish, because they certainly were not going to come looking for him, especially after he announced his presence. Now, when we say the fish have moved on, it's important to understand this is relative. We're not saying they swam to the other side of the lake. The distance is often surprisingly short. A spooked base might only move from the sunny side of a boat dock, piling to the shady side. A school of perch might just drop down 5 feet deeper along a weed line. Their world is much smaller than ours. The key is that they have moved out of their primary feeding lane and into a defensive position. Your job as a mobile angler is to find the next fish that is still in its feeding lane. By repositioning yourself, even by just a few feet, you can present your lure from a new angle that they might not perceive as a threat. Sometimes just changing the angle of your retrieve is enough to get a strike from a fish that was spooked by your first cast from a different direction. It's all about staying one step ahead. Ultimately, this all comes back to the importance of stealth. This whole problem of spooking fish with your first cast can be minimized if you approach the water like a hunter. Before you even think about casting, slow down, watch the water, use polarized glasses to look for any signs of fish or bait. When you move along the bank, walk softly. Don't skyline yourself on the horizon. Try to use trees or bushes as a backdrop to break up your silhouette. Your superpower as an angler isn't your casting distance or your expensive gear. It's your ability to go unnoticed. The less the fish know you are there, the less dramatic the impact of your first cast will be. A quiet presentation into an area where fish are unaware of you is the absolute pinnacle of good angling. It's the foundation upon which every successful fishing trip is built. Think stealth first and casting second. The biggest change you need to make is not in your tackle box, but in your head. It's a fundamental recalibration of your entire mindset. You need to shift from a passive sit and wait approach to an active hunt and seek strategy. Stop thinking, I'm going to wait here until the fish decide to bite. Instead, start thinking, I am going to move until I find fish that are willing to bite right now. This is a game changer. It puts you in control. You are no longer a victim of the fish's mood. You are a predator actively searching for your quarry. This mindset makes you a more efficient, more engaged, and ultimately a much more successful angler. It turns a potentially boring day of waiting into an exciting day of hunting, problem-solving, and discovery. The water is your chessboard, and it's time you started making the moves. So, here is your mission for your very next fishing trip. I want you to try this just once and see what happens. Before you go, set a timer on your phone or your watch for 5 minutes. When you get to your first spot, start the timer. Fish it with your highest confidence lure. Make your best casts. Give it your full attention. But the second that 5-minute timer goes off, if you haven't had a solid bite, you must reel in and move. No excuses, no just one more cast. Walk at least 30 feet down the bank or move the boat, then reset the timer and start again. I can almost guarantee you will cover more water than you ever have before, and you will be shocked at how this simple change forces you to find those small, isolated pockets of active fish you've been missing for years. You will end the day having fished more effectively than ever before. So let's wrap this all up. The big, brutal takeaway is this. Your first cast is a massive, disruptive event in the underwater world. It's not a subtle invitation to dinner, it's a loud, flashing warning signal. Your beloved favorite spot isn't a permanent address where fish live, it's a temporary location, and you, the angler, are often the primary reason for their eviction. The most shocking aha moment for many is realizing just how much precious time we've all wasted, sitting patiently in a spot that was effectively emptied out just moments after we arrived. The fish aren't ignoring your fancy new lure. In many cases, they aren't even there anymore. This simple realization changes everything. It transforms fishing from a passive waiting game into an active hunting game. You become proactive, strategic, and far more deadly on the water. Thank you so much for watching. If this video blew your mind a little bit, or at least made you rethink your strategy, do me a favor and hit that like button. And make sure you're subscribed for more myth-busting fishing truths that will help you catch more fish. Now, I have to hear from you. What's the absolute longest you've ever waited in one spot without a single bite, convinced they were just about to turn on? Let's share some war stories in the comments below.